What does it take to have an LGBTQ2 plus inclusive workplace? Today, I have the privilege of interviewing Michael Bach. Michael is the founder and CEO of CCDI Consulting, Inc. Michael and I have known each other for years, but some other important stuff. Michael is nationally and internationally recognized as a thought leader and subject matter expert in the fields of diversity, inclusion, and employment equity, bringing a vast knowledge of leading practices in a live setting to his work. He has deep experience in strategy development, stakeholder engagement, training and development, research, solution development and execution, employee engagement, data analytics, measurement and diversity scorecards, targeted recruiting strategies, marketing and communications, employee resource groups, diversity councils, and diversity-related legislations, among other skills, and diversity-related legislation, among other skills and experiences related to the field of diversity and inclusion. So you can see, we really have an expert with us today. So Michael, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Brent. I didn't know you were going to read the whole resume, or
Yay.
I would have taken some time.
No, this is great, because I think it's really important for folks out there to know that you have experience in a variety of areas beyond just the topic we're talking about today. So Michael, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to this point doing this kind of work?
Yeah, so it wasn't something I took in school. It wasn't available to take in school, in fact, when I was going to college and university. I say that I began my career in what we now call inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility 30-something years ago, when I started doing work, particularly in the LGBTQ2 plus space, involved with organizations like the Lesbian and Gay Youth of Toronto, the AIDS Committee of Toronto. And that was something I did as a volunteer until, long story short, I was working for KPMG, the global accounting firm, in the IT consulting practice. And myself, along with a group of 6 other people, started Pride at KPMG in Canada, which is the employee resource group for the LGBTQ2 plus population and their allies. And all of a sudden that got me the attention of the CEO and the senior executive. And I went to the head of HR and said, you know, if we're serious about diversity, we need full-time resources to do this. And I want the job. And they, her name's Beth Wilson, lovely friend. And she said, okay, go write a business case. And I think she was probably trying to get rid of me, but I went away and wrote a business case and became the first leader of diversity at the firm in Canada. And I went on to be the Deputy Chief Diversity Officer for KPMG globally for 2.5 years. And then in 2012, started CCDI Consulting and the Canadian Center for Diversity and Inclusion. So it 2005, 2006 became this magical year where my personal passions around inclusion, particularly of my community, merged with my profession. And they started paying me to actually do this work. And I've never looked back.
Wonderful. Yay. Well, it's been a wonderful journey, I'm sure, for you, but it's been a really important journey for the community to have you. So thank you. And in your recent book entitled Alphabet Soup, The Essential Guide to LGBTQ2 plus Inclusion at Work, you talk about creating an LGBTQ2 plus inclusive workplace. Can you tell us about your book and what you learned along the way?
Yeah, so I don't know if you heard, there was a pandemic. So I thought, hey, let's write another book. It was that, or I was just going to make more sourdough bread. I find, I guess, that after 30 plus years in this space, that I'm still getting asked the same questions. You know, there's a lot of people, particularly people who are straight and cisgender, who don't fully grasp the whole initialism LGBTQ2 plus. And what that entails, and that gender and sexuality are not the same thing. So I wrote a book with the objective of helping to clear up some of that misunderstanding and help organizations create LGBTQ2 plus inclusive spaces. And it goes beyond workplaces. It's hospitals and colleges and universities and spaces of faith, to make sure that people from the LGBTQ2 plus communities can be in those spaces and be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I focus a lot on the concept of safety in the book, because that, I believe, is fundamental to this conversation. That if a space is not safe, and that's not just physically safe, it's also psychologically safe, then we've lost before we've begun.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make sure that people understand that as LGBTQ2 plus people, we have often faced discrimination, be it a fear of physical violence, abuse, subtle discrimination, subtle homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia. And we need to have spaces where we can be ourselves without fear of repercussion. And the rest of the book is kind of the how you do that. Mm-hmm. But that is really a core component of it, is why it matters. And I talk about, the cost of the closet and how it's impacting organizations. And but really, it's about safety.
What are some of the main points you want people to take away from the book?
Well, I would say first is just understanding the basics of what these words mean. I include 2 chapters that are there to break down the difference between gender and sexuality, between identity and expression, between romantic and sexual attraction, and then 1 chapter that just is basically a glossary of terminology of words mm-hmm. that many people have never heard of. And I give some information on, what does it mean to be cisgender versus bigender versus demigender? That's first. Second is around, like I say, safe space. What is it? Why does it matter? Then is the tangible action items, because it's great to read a book and go, oh, that was really interesting, and then do nothing.
Yep.
But the whole point of writing Alphabet Soup was to say, we need to do something. We need to be moving towards more inclusive spaces. And so I really am trying to set people on that path, and I provide information on things like how to attract LGBTQ2 plus people to your organization, how to retain them, how to market to the queer communities. And it's the tangibleness of that I hope people will take away and go, oh yeah, I can do this. And I will add that, one of the fundamentals when I think about the reader, of course, publishers are always telling you, who's your reader? One of the biggest audiences for me was small to medium-sized organizations that often don't have an HR person, that certainly don't have a diversity person. They might have a committee, they might have an employee resource group, but these are small organizations. When you're the CEO of a small organization, I often joke that the title is not chief executive officer, it's chief everything officer. So I wrote the book to say, here, you just read this. It takes a couple hours to read. It's a quick read, but it will help you to move you in the right direction. And really, that's what I want to see. You and I have been around a few years. I'm just going to pull back on the fit. The lighting is really good. I want to see action. I want to see change. And we've seen a lot of change in 35 years. We need to see more.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And when the work that I do, and I'm sure in the work that you do, we come across those organizations that are really, really homophobic. And they're a challenge, but the vast majority of organizations don't intend to be. They just don't know what to do. They don't even sometimes know that they need to do something. And so I think where your book is going to be really helpful is that with that great middle ground of organizations that they may not be listed as the best of the best in the world or the worst of the worst, but they need some help. They need some guidance. They want to do the right thing. And wonderful. Yeah, exciting.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give companies who want to create an LGBTQ2 plus workplace?
Well, first off,
besides buy
my book, but besides buy my book, which of course was, first off, Brent, it's about taking action. I'm going to back up. First off, it's about understanding why it matters. and getting away from the social justice, it's the right thing to do argument. And with due respect to that argument, and it's one that you know me, I've been around a long time. I'm a big social justice warrior, but it's not an argument that really has a lot of traction with people that don't understand why this matters. Why it matters to a small business is the impact on their top and bottom line.
Yeah.
And I think business owners, as well as hospitals and universities, and they need to understand the positive impact that can have on their organization. So understand why it matters and then take action. And it doesn't have to be, massive, like TD Bank, bless their hearts, spend $1 billion on LGBTQ2 plus inclusion because they're sponsoring Pride festivals and they're doing all sorts of things. That's great. They're a bank. They print money for a living. What matters is doing small things, like putting your pronouns in your email signature or on your social media channels, like on Zoom and such. And that's not about me being misgendered. I have no fear of being misgendered because I have a beard, I have short hair, I appear stereotypically masculine. It's about sending a message to other people that you are inclusive and you are going to be respectful of another person's gender and their pronouns. So it's little actions, but you have to do something because it's not going to happen naturally. If we look at the science, our brains deliberately exclude. It's just the way our brains are wired. We are wired to question difference. And so if you aren't part of the LGBTQ2 plus communities, you may be subtly resistant to a lot of this and not understand why it matters. So it's about taking action, small actions, so that people start to see the change. And, I'll give you an example. So putting up a pride flag, it's June, it's Pride Month. As queer people, we are very attuned to symbolism and looking for that pride flag, because that's a message that indicates that the space we are in is safe. For straight cisgender people, they might be like, okay, well, it's a flag, whatever. For us, it's a beacon of hope. It's an indicator of safety. And it's small actions that are just as important as the big ones. That is what I would encourage people to do.
Neat. So Michael, beyond, buying your book, obviously, and learning and sharing, and people can also connect with CCDI and hire you as a consultant to help them with that process, to look at some of the bumps along the way and do some encouragement and some training, et cetera. Are there other resources, other things out there that you have noticed along the way that might be helpful?
Oh, there's so much good stuff out there. The internet is full of all sorts of good and bad. So let's be careful about Googling. I think when I think about the resources, I think about things like the genderbread person, which is a model that's used to explain gender, the concepts of gender. And you can go to genderbread.org to find out more about that. Or there's a website, it's pronouns.org, and it's all about pronouns and why they matter and how to use them. There's organizations like the 519 Community Center here in Toronto, or PFLAG, it used to stand for Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, but I think they've changed their name to stand for Parents and Friends of the LGBTQ2 plus communities. They have some brilliant resources. They have chapters across the country and around the world. There's the Human Rights Campaign in the United States, which is a brilliant organization. There's organizations like Pride at Work Canada, or Out and Equal in the US, which focus on LGBTQ2 plus inclusion in workplaces. There's organizations like MCC, the Metropolitan Community Church organization across North America, that are welcoming spaces from a faith perspective for the LGBTQ2 plus communities. I think it's just a matter of looking around and finding those resources. I would caution and say, be careful. because the internet has a lot of stuff on it that is not so reliable. And just look for those reliable sources. Look to mainstream organizations, mainstream publications to find those. But there is so much out there that you can use to help you create those LGBTQ2+ inclusive spaces. While hiring a reasonably priced consultant is always a good thing to do, you don't have to. And there's so much out there, but you just have to take some action. You have to actually start moving forward.
Well, Michael, thank you for your work down through the years in a variety of ways and a variety of places that led you to this. And certainly thank you for your book, because we know that inclusive workplaces not only affect the bottom line, but they make places safe for employees to flourish and to offer their best. And they give hope to customers when they see those symbols that it's a company they want to do business with. So thank you, and thank you for taking the time today to talk with us. In our ongoing work with Rainbow Faith and Freedom, one of the areas that we focus on is confronting religious-based homophobia and religious-based transphobia in the workplace. And we are doing some panels with Pride at Work, presentations to employee resource groups, and focusing on some of the tensions between the religious right and LGBT folk. What we're noticing in Canada is the more open that companies are to LGBT folks, and at the same time, what's happening is the Trumpian movement in the United States has encouraged the radical religious right to be more outspoken and in many cases more obnoxious. And so there's some tensions being created. So that's the narrow lane that we work in. And can you share with us any experiences? Sorry. And so to our viewers today, we asked you if you could share with us any experiences that you've had in your workplace around diversity and inclusion, positive or negative. And if you found this interview helpful, please consider subscribing to this channel. It's free to subscribe, and it really helps us a lot. And don't forget to check out Michael Bach's links and information in the information section below on how to order his book. Again, Michael, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, folks.